One of the biggest challenges India faces is in the area of providing equal opportunities to all sections of society. Skill development is one initiative which brings equal opportunities to all.
PanIIT Alumni Reach for India Foundation, headquartered at IIT Bombay, partners with state governments through non-profit, joint venture enterprises to create an institutionalized skill development architecture exclusively for the underserved across all districts of the state. The first such special purpose vehicle or SPV was created with agencies of welfare of the government of Jharkhand. The PanIIT model of skill development is predicated on a short placement, 100% skill loan financing, best-in-class training and residential infrastructure led by ex-army personnel. The foundation runs Gurukuls with 2 to 3 month training in construction, logistics, manufacturing and Kaushal colleges imparting 1 to 2 years of trade licenses, vocational education in trades like nursing, catering exclusively for the underserved.
अच्छी ट्रेनिंग आपको मिल रही है। आप सौभाग्यशाली हैं कि आप देश के इस हुनरमंद काम को बढ़ाने वालों में सबसे अच्छी संस्थाएं हैं जो 3-4 उसमें से एक मैंने अनुभव किया। भारत सरकार का मंत्री बोल रहा है तो कहीं बहुत अच्छा काम है और
कॉन्फिडेंस हमको गुरुकुल दिया है सर के स्टूडेंट जो निकल के गए हैं वो अच्छी नौकरी भी कर रहे हैं और गुरुकुल के स्टूडेंट्स विदेश तक गए हैं।
आज अगर गुरुकुल में अगर नहीं होता, ना ही मैं दुबई को देख पाता, ना ही मैं 35 से 40 हजार में कमाता।
ये नर्सिंग कौशल कॉलेज है और मेरी फैमिली कंडीशन उतना अच्छा नहीं है कि इसमें लोन प्रोसेस के द्वारा पढ़ाई कराई जाती है जिसमें कि घर से पैसे नहीं लगते हैं। कॉलेज बहुत अच्छा है क्योंकि इसमें फैसिलिटी ज़्यादा है और यहाँ थ्योरी क्लास के साथ साथ प्रैक्टिस पर ज़्यादा ध्यान दिया जाता है कि इसमें हाई टेक्नोलॉजी के द्वारा पढ़ाया जाता है। जैसे कि सिमुलेटर है, यहाँ वार्ड बनाए गए हैं जैसे प्रैक्टिस वार्ड है, ICU वार्ड है।
Some of the studies have proven that if we use something like a helmet patient interface, the device which we have developed, lungs problem which lot of patients face can be assuaged and the patients can recover faster and better. That has been proven in some studies.
Our next moderator is Sanjeev Rangras, Group Head Designate of R&D, Sustainability and Central Projects at ITC. He's the former CEO of its Agri-Business Division. An alumnus of IIT Kanpur, he has served ITC for 38 years in various capacities across manufacturing, operations, and HR.
Good evening to all. On behalf of PanIIT Global eConclave 2020, I welcome you all to this panel discussion on rebuilding agriculture and food security. On the panel, I have followers with me. I have Shri Madhu Pandit, who's the founder of Akshay Patra, and Mr. PVS Surya Kumar, Deputy Managing Director of NABARD. It is indeed a privilege hosting these two stalwarts. The other key thing about all three of us on this panel is we are lifers with our respective organizations. We started a career with our organization. We are still with them. So we don't represent the new generation which shifts jobs every 2-3 years. So this is an example of this panel. So welcome to everyone. I will very briefly introduce you to my panel members, and then I will give you a brief context of this subject before I start shooting questions to these two stalwarts. I will introduce Shri Madhu Pandit, Chairman, Akshay Patra Foundation. He is also the president of ISKCON Bangalore. He hails from Nagarkoil, India. He's done his BTech in civil engineering from IIT Bombay and has dedicated himself to the service of humanity whilst doing his BTech in 1981. He received his Padma Shri in 2016. So out of the three of us, he's the most awarded, rewarded individual amongst us. And it's a great privilege having him here. He initiated Akshay Patra school lunch program in a very small way with midday meals to children, beginning with 5 government schools in Bangalore. Akshay Patra, for people who don't know, feeds currently 1.8 million children. We're using 52 kitchens in 12 states and union territories. For people studying logistics and network optimization, this is the example that we should study more often. He was instrumental in designing the first centralized and mechanized kitchen of Akshay Patra and making Akshay Patra the world's largest NGO-run school lunch program. So that's the first panelist with me. The second panelist is Mr. PVS Surya Kumar. He's a lifer with NABARD. I think people should have heard about NABARD. He joined NABARD in '86 and has been with them. He's handled multiple functions in multiple geographies. I was counting his geographies. He's been to 8 states. I've been to 7 states. I'm one short of his state. Right now, the number of states he's done. He's obtained a master in plant genetics from the Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi, and masters in sustainable development from Staffordshire University, UK. He's the former head of NABARD's Karnataka office and has recently taken over his current portfolio. Welcome, Mr. Surya Kumar. So I will spend the next 2-3 minutes describing the context. There are lots of IITians I noticed from in this particular people listening to us, and several people who may not understand agriculture. So I'll spend a couple of minutes giving you the context of agriculture in India, so that that forms a good background before I shoot questions to my eminent panelists. For those who don't know, there are 120 million farmers in India and almost 140 million farm laborers. We have in India around 6.5 lakh villages, and India's GDP, agri contributes around 16 to 17%. It is source of employment for more than 50% of our population, and 60% of India's population depends on agriculture. 3,000 different crops, million varieties. India, by the way, people who don't know, has the largest arable land, just number 2 to USA, around 159 million hectares. USA has 174, China has only 100 million hectares, and Brazil 60 million hectares. However, China produces the largest amount of agri-produce, $1,700 billion worth of agri-produce. India is a poor second at 500, followed by USA at 450. Netherlands, with 1 million hectares, does 100 billion exports, 100 US billion dollars exports. India is at 38 billion. So the idea is to tell you the size of countries and what all they are managing to do. India is doing well, but I think there's a lot more that we need to do, hence the discussion on rebuilding. As far as productivity is concerned, we are the second largest producer of rice and wheat, but we rank 38th in productivity. Rice, 2,000 kgs per hectare, whereas global average is around 2,000. Soybean, 1,200, global average 2,700. Millets, 1.27, United States 2. Sugarcane, we are at around 70, whereas US is around 80 tons per hectare. So, but if I look at India at an overall basis, you've been hearing good news in the Rabi and now the Kharif crop. Cereal production is 275 million metric tons and horticulture is around 317, sufficient for our country. Cereal consumption is only 200 million metric tons, whereas the production is 275. We are surplus. Current buffer stock for both rice and wheat stands at almost 100 million metric tons, and our norm for buffer is around 40. We have 2.5 times the stock which we need for buffers. So we are sufficient. So if someone talks food security at an overall level, I think we are comfortable. But I think the devil lies in the detail. Where are we at a micro level? Is the entire population covered, or are all people nourished? The latest data says 195 million people are undernourished and 38% of the children are stunted. I think with this background, I will straight away shoot my first question to Mr. Surya Kumar. I know there have been a lot of reforms in the last 1 or 2 months. We've been hearing about reforms. Surya, the buzz is all about the reforms. And the farmers, they say the farmers have been unshackled from the bondage, they say, since 1985, since the British started the Mandi system. They're almost saying it is like the liberalization of the economy in 1991. What are your views on these reforms, their impact on rebuilding agriculture, and how it benefits the central actor, the farmer? Over to you, Surya.
Thank you, Sanjeev. The reforms are simply fantastic. For the first time ever, we have 3 great pieces of ordinance which are going to become into acts. To put simply in perspective, anyone can trade in agriculture. They need not necessarily go through APMCs. And second thing is, we can have contract farming for up to 5 years, where the buyer can invest in technology. And the government is telling we wouldn't get into the Essential Commodities Act management until it is warranted. These 3 are the revolutionary changes. But one surprising thing is they are lost into the din which the democracy creates. Not much of traction has happened. Many people don't even understand it. For example, when we're talking about the APMCs, at this point in time, we have around 6,600 APMCs across the country. The committee which talked about doubling of the farmers' income said we can have around 10,200 APMCs. That means we can have around 3,600 APMCs in the private sector. When we're talking about private sector, we are talking about APMCs, we're talking about warehouses which are WDRA standardized warehouses. We are talking about assaying facilities, grading facilities, where we're going to integrate the whole thing. At this point in time, we just have around 62 or 70 warehouses in the private sector. This is the opportunity which this act, this ordinance provides. And when we're talking about contract farming, many people think contract farming is only for niche products, maybe like chia seeds. When we're talking like COVID has made things very different. People are asking where the produce has come from. When we have a contract farming of even plain dal chawal, if we can say this has come from this particular place, this is going to be a game changer. And I already said about the Essential Commodities Act. The government earlier was protecting they were acting between the unforgiving market and the innocent customer, innocent farmer. So now government says, I would step back, I would have an oversight mechanism, but you can play the game properly. So the market is going to change. The market has changed, and government said, I will step back and asking the market to manage. This is something which we never ever looked at in all these years. So I think this is going to be win-win for the private sector, win-win for the customer, and for the farmer.
Thanks, Surya. So that's something very, very reassuring. However, the reforms have been done only recently. I think we would need to perhaps wait for people to understand the rules to come out before we are able to see an impact. I think something which has has stayed in bondage for so long, we have to give it some time to understand what is going on with this freedom. But let's switch from the value chain. You are at one end of the value chain, right? Let's switch to the other end of the value chain where Madhu Panditji operates. So he operates at the food security and nutrition. He delivers it. He delivers it to 1.8 million people. So let me understand from Shri Madhu Pandit as to how does he view this subject about food security and nutrition, and how is he driving it during these difficult times? Mr. Madhu Pandit.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Let me start with giving a picture about food insecurity globally and as well as in India. It is estimated that about 2 billion people globally have insufficient food, and out of that, about 830 million can be classified as hunger, and 194 million are from India, which means almost 50% of the hungry people all over the world are in India. And with this COVID situation, it is estimated that things are going to be, worse because of economic downturn created by the COVID-19 situation. And we have, if we don't, take sufficient steps now, the good probability that there's almost 1/3 of the world, this is an estimate, UN estimate, 1/3 of the world would come under food insecurity. So this is a very serious situation where, the policymakers of different countries, United Nations, and civil society, NGOs, think tanks should all come together to meet this new challenge that humanity is facing. We hope that by God's grace, we will be able to handle this situation, because food is something very primary and fundamental. Those who have food, those who have food security, very often do not realize what is the pain of food insecurity. That's why even according to our Vedic ethos, they say Annadhana is Shreshtadhana, that food distribution is considered to be the highest charity. So in this situation, COVID situation, even Akshaya Patra has been able to come of help to the government, especially the infrastructure investment that we have done, the investment that we have done in infrastructure of 52 centralized kitchen all over the country has come very handy for the government to distribute freshly cooked meal to thousands and thousands of, lakhs of migrant workers, industrial workers, industrial construction laborers. So this has, as in the last 4 months, Akshaya Patra has been able to distribute almost 70 million meals all over India, of which about 40 million meals are cooked meals and 30 million equivalent of groceries have been distributed. And this was only possible by leveraging the different partnerships of Akshaya Patra with the corporates, with the government, with this other HNIs, as well as dovetailing the resource mobilization capacity of Akshay Patra, which has been the last 20 years in this world, built a very reputable brand for its transparency, accountability, and all this has come of help. And with the help of the government, they are telling us which COVID centers we should feed, and we are going and distributing these meals.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pandit, just to carry on this talk, because you touched a very raw chord, I think that I need to ask you one question. I agree, 70 million. I think you are an exemplar. Your organization is an exemplar. But you were providing 1.8 million meals per day to the children who used to come for the midday meal. What is happening to these children, and what are you planning for them? We talk about online education, but for these 1.8 million people, it was more than education. It was a good meal per day. And now they're missing out on this. So what are we going to do for these 1.8 million children? Can I have some of your perspectives?
Yes. You see, as of now, to be frank with you, the midday meal scheme has stopped for these 1.8 million children. It's very unfortunate. Now, there are two obstacles to do something towards, tackling this problem. One is the government, because it's a government program. We cannot do anything that we want. So the government has to bring about changes in the policy. Like, for instance, let us say if we want to go and deliver the food deliver raw ingredients to the households, government has to clear that. Government has to take a decision on that. In fact, several people have gone to the court and said that, something should be done for these children. But even the judges have said the government is in a great difficult situation. Let them decide what is the alternative method. In the last 4 months, nothing has happened. As a solution, at least I would say that, some kind of economic support for these households by direct transfer, cash transfer system that is there, for these people. Some economic financial support should be given by the central government. That's one thing. Another thing is, at least as the COVID recedes, when the midday meal is again reintroduced, we have to introduce breakfast program also, so that you give 2 meals a day. Midday meal is where the government is assuring 1 meal a day. Give 2 meals. Breakfast also should be introduced, and also special micronutrients. All these kind of initiatives should be enhanced, so that we catch up on their nutrient deficiency and do something about that. And continuously we are working with the government, with the Ministry of HRD Ministry, how we can find some solution to reach the midday meal to the children. But there has to be of course, government is facing a huge challenge among so many other problems to handle midday meal for almost 10 million 10 crore children all over the country. So they have to come up with a response to this COVID situation as far as midday meal is concerned.
Thank
we are with the government.
Yeah, thank you. So, Mr. Pandit, I think nevertheless, Akshay Patra has put his foot forward. You provided 70 million meals, but at an overall basis, my heart still goes out for those 1.8 million children. So I'm looking at the entire end of the rainbow. On one end, I have these children and the meals that you're providing. On the other end, Surya looks into the farmer. So let me now switch to the other end of the rainbow, or the other end of the spectrum. Surya, this is a question to you. The central actor at your end is the farmer. And India has been talking about doubling farm income, DFI. That's the most heard of word in our agri world. And we said we'll achieve it by 2022, right? I talked about exports as one way. What is your view on this critical aspect of doubling farm income? I'm sure you will mention 10 different ways of how doubling farm income can happen, which most of us in agri know, but you'll have to, at the end of it, bring out 3 or 4 key solutions for us as to how do we help the farmer out, because everyone in the value chain is gaining, but we need to have our eyes and mind out for this central actor called the farmer. Over to you.
When the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned the word doubling of farmers' income, that was a very paradigm shift in our thinking. So far, we always talked about how much more we produce, how much more we produce. We were caught in 1950s time wrap and thinking. And when the Prime Minister said we should do doubling of farmers' income, many people who know a lot of mathematics said, oh, by 2022, it's very difficult. Agriculture has to grow at this particular point, at this particular pace. I think they were basically, while I don't question their numbers and mathematical prowess, I personally feel that they really missed the intent of the Prime Minister. Like I look at it, when we're talking about doubling a farmer's income, I look at it from 3 angles. You can do doubling a farmer's income when you increase the productivity of a particular crop. Say, for example, look at any crop which we have in the country. The productivity levels of every crop are far lower than the world standards. Can we grow? You also mentioned a very strong pertinent point. India has 169 million hectares out of 329 million hectares under arable land. We are the highest almost. So when we increase the productivity, obviously some land which grows under a particular crop can come down. So the land can be used for something else. Then there is a second aspect to it. Can we bring down the cost of cultivation? I think when you really look at some farming, most of the Indian farmers have lost control on their agriculture. So when the input companies make money, the cost of inputs have gone up. The cost of the price which the farmers get has really not gone up to that proportion. To that extent, we really need to think, how do we bring down the cost? And 3, how do we make the markets transparent? All the 3 ordinances are on the electronic national marketing system is towards that direction. But when we also talk about doubling a farmer's income, we are also talking about what goes farm income is basically an aggregate of what comes from the farm sector, what comes from the allied sector, what comes from the tertiary sector. There are enough number of studies where they say farmers earn money from the other act also, like he is working as a construction labor. Maybe he has gone somewhere. There is a farm. There is around 40% of the income coming from the non-farm sector. So when we're talking about the doubling of farmers' income, we need to have a regional model. In how many places, how many states do we have regional models? When we're talking about regional models, say for example, Mandya in Karnataka is much different from Raichur in Karnataka. So Shimoga in Karnataka is very different from, again, Mandya. So we need to have a model which fits into a particular ecosystem. Like what should be the component of crops? What should be the component of off-farm income? What should be the component of animal husbandry, floriculture, or the tree-based farming? So do we have such sort of models? I think we do not have such sort of. We have such more examples. All I am asking is every state government should really look at having a department which integrates, weaves all these best practices, best models which they have, and make them into a mosaic and say, this is a thing which I offer to this particular district. This is a thing which I offer for other district. This is the way we should really look at doubling a farmer's income. I haven't spoken to the Honorable Prime Minister, but I'm sure this is what he should be thinking when he has given his intent. Instead of in behavior, I'll say one last thing. In behavioral science, when you go through some sort of personal growth labs, they use a particular very strong terminology. Stay with the feedback. When there is an intent that we should do doubling of the farmer's income, I think we should stay with the feedback and look at what we need to do going back. What are the models which we can put them together? And I think this is a modular piece. We should really look at parts which go into the modular mechanism which can double the farmer's income. This is the way we should go forward, and we haven't still started working towards that, and it's time we really look at, and this is very much possible.
Thank you, Surya. I think that's a very, very nice way to look at it. But the question which comes to my mind is that if you can increase productivity, I'm going to get back to you. If you increase productivity and I go up from 275 million metric tons of cereals and I jump to 350, and my horticulture jumps from 317 to 400, what am I going to do? Because this year, with the Kharif crop being good, the monsoon being good, everyone feels that monsoon is good, but I'm worried that the crop is going to be in excess, and if the crop is in excess, is going to impact and depress the prices. So what is going to happen to yours and ours central actor called the farmer at the end of this year?
The only way forward is do what best you can and go and look at the markets outside. Like government has again made a very strong intent, one district, one product. When we're talking about one district, there is a specialized product available in a particular place. Can we really make that the best thing? Can we make others what you call buy that? Can we export? We must. You just said small country like Netherlands exports $100 billion worth agricultural produce. We are at 38. We can. This is the way forward. We can touch the market, export market, and help with the excesses. Right now, we will be slightly excess. That is one area. Export is one area. Second thing is processing, micro processing at the district level itself. I think some point of time, like I was a part of one study, which really looked at what is sold in few mandis. What we did was we really looked at what all is sold in the mandis and where it has come from. So we discovered it could be there were achar is there was papad is there is some sort of small non-farm sector things were there, and around 75 to 85% of the products come from within the local economy, and only 25% to 15% came from outside. So you look at what can be done within the local market, and then you export what you can, what the local market doesn't consume. But when you specialize in a particular thing, for example, there is something called as a brown top millet, which is very nutritious. Brown top millet costs almost 200 rupees, and it is not available all the time. So, and then there is a demand for it. COVID has made things much more different. People are asking for specific products which can boost the immunity. That is the only way everyone understands how do I deal with my energy system, my body, to make it much more stronger, resilient to this invisible actor which is causing lots of problems. Either we export and we become good with what we produce, the best, then finding markets for that will not be difficult at all. I think we have all people like you who are masters with branding. How many agricultural commodities ever got branded? There is a huge scope for agricultural commodities to be branded. How many people know that there is a black rice? How many people know that there is something called as a Rajpuri rice, which the kings in Mysore used to eat? So there is a market for it. So one need to educate people and take them to the next level. I am very confident. There are so many. India is such a diverse country with diverse products. We should, all people like you should work to brand, sub-brand, and make things to different markets. This is very much possible. In case a particular land, which when the productivity increases, we can keep the land fallow for some time. The land will recuperate. Anyway, we are pushing the land to produce so much. Like again, I would again quote the Honorable Prime Minister. He said you should reduce use of the chemical fertilizers. When we keep the land silent, fallow for some time, the land recuperates. So can we not play when we master that game? I choose this particular land for some time, other part of the land for some other time. We can really play with that. There is technology available. Should take it to the farmer. I am very, very sure about that.
Thank you very much, Surya. That's so energizing hearing it from you. Talking about branding of agri-produce. Who said that branding could happen only to processed food? So he's talking about millets, etc. So now on this concept of millets, black rice, etc., let me move to Madhuji and ask him. I remember having a conversation with Madhuji, and he was saying that the nutrition aspect which they feed the 1.8 million children must change, and we must bring in millets, etc. into it. So I would like to hear from Madhuji, how does he deliver a nutritious meal to those 1.8 million people? How does he balance that out? And what are his views about bringing in millets, etc., which I heard recently the government is wanting to introduce in the PDS?
Yeah, Sanjeev and Surya, you are talking about millets. Introducing, as of now, the midday meal program is stuck with, the government giving rice or wheat, and we have no alternative where we could actually support the farmers who can grow millets. So if there is an integrated approach where the agriculture sector and this huge consumption of food by especially midday meal program, 100 million children being fed in this country, I mean, it can boost the agriculture sector like anything. For this, there needs to be a dialogue between these two sectors, and that has to be facilitated by agencies like Niti Aayog or other NGOs who can come together. And if we can create that kind of a, for instance, you're all experts in agriculture, both of you. These millets, it can be grown in drought-hit areas like in Karnataka, Raichur, Bijapur, all those places. Millets will grow very nicely. Surya can tell the consumption of water is very small fraction of rice and wheat. So, and the point is, if there is demand for millets, even economically, those areas will just, thrive. So somehow it has to be, we should not get stuck into only rice and wheat. And millets are very good with diabetes raging in this country. We have to get, we should not get stuck to only these two grades in midday meal and ICDS. We should start introducing the millets. And for that, we need full support from the agriculture sector to produce that, because there's not sufficient production of millet now, because there's no demand.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I think at this juncture there are a couple of audience questions. So let me take the first audience question So could we bring the person who's asking this question? Yes, sir. Please tell us, sir.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Sanjeev, Mr. Surya, and Pandit Ji. My name is Venkatraman Ravi from IIT Madras Alumni. I find that even the farmers' sons are not wanting to pursue a career in agriculture and farming. So my question to Mr. Sanjeev is, how can we make agricultural career aspirational to youth, including the IIT students?
So that's a tough question. Now, since you are a senior from IIT, I will have to answer it very diligently. This is a big issue in India, right across all states, and we are struggling. So someone asked me, why do you complain about labor shortage in a country which has such large population? What has happened is, as we have educated our children even in the villages, they are finding that the jobs bring in a lot of drudgery and they wouldn't like to be associated. But let me tell you a silver lining which I've seen the last 3 months. A lot of people from the big cities have come in, the reverse migration, as they say. A lot of plumbers, electricians, various skilled people from the states, from the big cities have come in. Big cities where Madhuji stays, where Surya stays. I stay in Guntur in a small place. So from these states, people have come in from these cities and they are looking for good options. So I think when we are looking at rebuilding agriculture, there is a lot of ag tech, agriculture technology coming in. There is a lot of drones coming in for spraying. I think it's a way we recast the entire job sector in the rural area and call them drone operators, call them extension people. There is enough opportunity available, but there needs to be skilling. We need to bring in what you call a respect for the people working in the agriculture. So it is a problem. I don't think we have an answer, but your question is very relevant in the Indian context, where today during harvesting also the farmers are not getting people. In fact, I see another startup which is starting what is called a rural clap instead of an urban clap, so that tomorrow we can aggregate labor and bring about some optimization and try and upskill the entire thing. It's a very relevant question, no ready answers, but a burning problem for it. Surya, would you have a perspective on that, since you deal a lot with people on the ground?
Skilling is I think skilling is the most important thing. The way fertilizers have to be used, the way the pesticides have to be used. We all think farmers know. We can, like I was talking about reducing the cost for cultivation. There is enough skilling required to be done even at the farmers level, and that will really help.
So there's one more audience question. I think back to you, Surya. It is from one Sundar Ram Madhuri. Why is cooperative movement not deployed in agriculture? I think you're the best person to respond to this.
Oh, like cooperative system is very much in agriculture. We have 1 lakh primary agricultural credit cooperative societies. They're into providing credit. They're also into providing inputs. Then on top of them, we have something called as a district central cooperative banks and the Apex Bank. Primarily, it's a 3-tier structure. They're very, very vibrant. In the agriculture credit market, they're almost close to around 19-20% of the total share when you're talking about financially, but they cover a huge number of farmers. They're very much into that. The IFCO, CRIPCO, all of them are in the cooperative space. And the Amul is in the cooperative space. All the milk, most of the milk which most of us in the cities and even very urban areas consume is from the cooperative sector.
Good. So now since you talked about this, let me pose one more question to you, Surya. Now, the latest talk is about farmer producer organizations, FPO, FPCs. And I believe that NABARD, under your able leadership, has done some substantial work in this. What view I've heard is people are getting impatient. And then we are reminding people that even in the milk movement, even Mr. Kurian used to tell us that it takes 5 to 10 years for the cooperatives to evolve. So I think with the APMC being changed and the farmers being having the freedom to sell, I believe the right time for FPOs has come. What is your view on the FPO system? How will we enable the farmers to become independent and run their own enterprise? And will it increase their income and move a bit towards doubling of their income?
When we're talking about, like, at this point in time, we have roughly around 7,000 farmer producer organizations in the country. Government of India has taken a very bold step of creating 10,000 farmer producer organizations. NABARD is working closely with the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, SFAC and NCDC in creation of these 10,000 farmer producer organizations. Number two, farmer producer organizations are basically, India is basically 85% of the farmers in India are small and marginal farmers who have around 1 hectare of land, less than 1 hectare of land. So when they go to the market, they always have a problem of a little amount of produce which they have to market. Farmer producer organizations will primarily aggregate, and it will give strength for the farmers to deal in the market. So farmers producer organizations have really proved their mettle in the COVID time when they did the direct marketing to the consumers. Many people think FPOs can only do the direct marketing to the urban, peri-urban consumers. No. Like, I want FPOs, I wish we are working towards that. I want the FPOs to really go and take over the mandis. That is the place where the whole game will be changed. When the APMC Act has changed, then everyone can go and sell or buy anywhere. We want the FPO. I wish the FPOs will take over mandis at some point of time. And one more interesting thing which FPOs can do and should do at some point in time is, I think there is in dietology there is something called as a food diary. What all you consume, people write. So FPOs, members of the FPOs should understand what typically an urban, semi-urban customer is eating, and what he or she should produce to match to that requirements with traceability and with genuine inputs which get into that. So when this happens, yes, it will take time. So FPO is in the market, is in the development paradigm in the last 3 to 4 years. And in the coming 3 to 4 years, when everyone puts their best foot forward, I wish and believe this can really empower farmers to understand what the consumers want, and obviously it will help their incomes to become better. I look forward for a great future.
Thank you, Surya. I think the two learnings that I'm walking out is FPOs could be a very important step between the individual farmer and the larger ecosystem. You need some set of aggregators, some set of negotiating body who can work for the farmer. And the other good thing that I picked up from you is that demand-centric and market-centric. So those are important learnings for us, that FPOs could respond to what the markets need. And the important thing you raised about is traceability, and how do we ensure that when I'm buying something safe, and the aspect of safety which has come out loud and clear during this COVID time. So let me now get back to Madhuji on two things. Madhuji, a lot of people are asking me this question: what inspired this IITian to move into this sector? So I thought I'll ask you this question in the beginning, but I knew that it could be a long discourse from you. but I wanted to ask you this question now. And let me tell you, you have a large community from IITians watching you. And these are people, as we all know, who've done well, right, in life. A lot of IITians across the world, they're all listening to you. So this is your time to tell them about your inspirational story, what made you move into this, and also seek out help for Akshay Patra. Why not? When you have an opportunity, go for it.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Yes, when I was in my 4th year BTech, actually I had got completely frustrated with the heavy pressure of relative grading and all this. I wanted a very comfortable way of learning. So, for me, entering IIT, the day I entered IIT, at that age, misery began. But, now when I look back, in one sense, yes, it has strengthened me. I have to give credit. As an adult now, when I see the IIT, the pressure in IIT has lifted the threshold level of our stress taking, everything to meet the challenges. It's definitely contributed. But as a young man, yes, I hated it. So anyway, being inspired, the only solace for me was the IIT library. I used to go sit, and in spite of being a technological institution, had a long row of philosophy books. Wow. And then that is how every day evening I used to go and I used to sit and read, different philosophies. And then one day I came across, this books of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And I was really, I got all the answers that I wanted. And I knew that, at least I knew what I have to do to get those, answers fulfilled. I was always seeking for the cause of all causes, the absolute truth, etc. So more on a philosophical, even today, I may be doing Akshay Patra, but my consciousness is largely, like Akshay Patra is like one of the activities.
Yes.
And so many other things in the larger perspective of welfare of humanity and this human suffering. For instance, this COVID situation. Unless there is compassion, unless we pull out the compassion of humanity, we cannot deal with the post-COVID situation. Everybody has to come in, pitch in, and all the earlier systems have been disrupted. In this an extraordinary situation, the networking has to start at a different platform. The perspectives of business, perspectives of different agencies, government agencies, everything should bring in a lot of innovation to deal with today's situation as well as post-COVID situation. So Akshay Patra started again only with feeding 1,500 children. But then, you see, faith, spirituality has a major role to play to build up this Akshay Patra to this level. When I started with 1,500 children, some of the donors who had this material calculations, they came and told me, hey, why you are starting this? If you start this, you cannot stop. Every day you have to feed 1,500 people. Where is your guarantee for an income source? I said, no, Krishna will provide. And today I see after 20 years, we have reached 1.8 million. I would say that even I was also little, somebody said 1,500. But the next day, when next month after reaching 5,000 people, when the press came to me, I said 30,000. But my goal is 30,000. And 30,000, then that night I couldn't sleep. Next day in newspaper, it all said, Madhu Pandita said 30,000 is going to feed, 30,000 is going to feed every day. But you see, the power of spirituality, the power of faith in God. What 30,000 now? 1.8 million. So if there is a will to share, if there is a will to contribute to make a change in this world beyond our own selfish interest, of course we all have our self-interest. We also have to have an expanded interest for the rest of the society. This change in spiritual culture is very important at the foundational level as far as the consciousness of people are concerned. So that is the reason why I say that, to deal even with post-COVID situation, there is an element of spirituality is very much essential to bring about transformation in the leaders. Very important, because now the burden has fallen on the leaders. We are business leaders. You are all business leaders. It has fallen on the leaders. The people who are disadvantaged, who are underserved in the society, they cannot find a solution for these things. So it's our responsibility to find a solution for this, not only the current situation, for all problems of humanity.
Madhuji, there is a question coming, and I have to stop you in between. Yeah. But there's a question coming, like you're catering for these midday meals for children. Is it possible for you to look at an intervention for migrant workers in construction sector who are away from home and they don't get nutritious meals? Have you ever thought about it?
No, that's exactly it. Out of the 70 million people meals that we have served, a large number of meals are served for the migrant workers camps in different parts of India. So it's already going on, because they are one of the biggest beneficiaries of this COVID pandemic measures that we have taken. And if the gentleman who has this question, he has some centers can inform us, and we will also see that we raise the funds for that, and we'll include them also.
Oh, thank you very much. This is a question from Raghuveer, and this answer is meant for Raghuveer. So if you have something in your mind, please do send a mail to Mr. Madhu Pandit and look at his mind. He's saying there is sufficiency and they will try and provide. So that is the mindset. And I think I've heard a similar thing from several people during the COVID time. People have changed. Spirituality, ability to realize that others in the society are not being able to get as much as we are getting. I think the COVID situation will slowly unravel. We're going to be needing people like all of us to contribute as we go ahead. So thanks for giving that perspective. And Madhuji, don't forget, there's a large public hearing you. You must seek out something for your organization also. And would request, this is the organization that I know PanIIT also is doing Reach for India, but there are people from IIT like Madhu Pandit who are participating and doing something and making a difference to all of us. So I think we look for generous support, whether in kind or cash. It will be very nice. I know I'm not supposed to be asking all these questions, but let me switch to one technical question to you, Mr. Madhu. So what have you done in your kitchens which reaches back to your IIT days? What is the technology that you have brought in? So at least something which you picked up in your 5 years. You did a 5-year course, I know. So what did you pick up, one or two things which has been implemented in your kitchens? We want to know that.
Yeah, first thing is, common sense. And you see, we have a centralized kitchen, and centralized kitchen, the drudgery that is there to lift the huge quantities of rice, huge quantities of dal, to make it easy for the people to work. One of the things we have implemented in our kitchen is everything goes through elevator buckets to the top floor, and from the top floor, one by one, rice, the quantity of rice comes down through the chutes into the cauldrons. Processing, washing, everything happens on the top. So in other words, this kind of common gravity flow production. Yeah, I'm not a mechanical engineer, but it's that's why I said most of the places we have done we have used common sense, and I always found that technology, if you blindly apply, it is going to be very ineffective. We have to use it. You have to, for instance, we have ETP plants. We have a lot of rice ganji that comes out. It's been a big challenge for us.
Oh, right.
Standard solutions we give, and then whole equipment is a waste. It doesn't work. So we have to use common sense. And finally, we solved all these problems using common. Many things in our kitchen, we have innovated and made it more efficient than, and the standards we follow is, highest standards of food safety in our kitchens, highest standards. And imagine, this is such a sensitive program. Till today, touch wood, not one case of food poisoning has come. 20 years. All our kitchens are ISO certified.
That's outstanding, I think. And I've heard about it. I've not visited. You have still to invite several of us. But whatever I've heard is that it is something which most people must see, understand, and try and adapt to their respective organization. So before I give my closing remarks, one short question for Surya. Surya, what do you think? Is this the right time for the agricultural nutrition highway? What is the first policy intervention that you would recommend from the government? Just 1 minute I'm giving you.
Yeah. We have to look at around 100 million hectares in India is rain-fed. So always we looked at food security, which we achieved. The rain-fed agriculture can produce many things which can boost our nutrition security. We need to have a differentiated policy for the rain-fed agriculture because they can produce millets. We can improve the productivity of millets. Typically, most of the millets are around 600, 700 kilos per hectare. They can be brought to a higher level. They can be helped to brand. They don't really require so much of urea and all these things. They require farmyard manure and some sort of compost and such sort of things. So we need to have two different policies. One for the food security, which we produce for the whole nation. We're talking about rice, wheat, such sort of things and pulses. And the rain-fed farming, which produces pulses, oilseed, nutrition cereals. We need to have a differentiated policy because this is what makes India nutritious, and the nutrition security is very important. These days, many people in the urban areas buy a lot of food supplements. So many things are being advertised. Like when I recently asked a dean of a medical college, is it really required? Should I really buy because I'm a vegetarian? He told me, just don't do this. Eat your pulses properly. Eat your millets properly. I have millets as a breakfast every day. So we need to have a differentiated policy, which will help the country in a much better way.
Thank you very much, Madhuji. Thank you very much, Suryaji. I am going to end off on I'm not going to try and summarize what you people have said, but I'm going to end off on a different note. So whilst our production figures showed that at an overall level, we are food secure, but food security is not equal to good nutrition. And we may be secure on a food security at an overall level, but when we look at nutrition, I think we are very, very far from there. So someone commented, we have hunger amid abundance. So that is something which we need to look at. And I was just reading the definition of what is food security. It says, when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. That's a FAO definition, but that is something which we need to change. So when we rebuild agriculture, and food security, we have to keep the farmer in mind. We have to keep the end person who gets the nutrition in mind. And we are far from there. Various indicators of nutrition in India indicate that we have failed to achieve adequate rates of food security. 36% of children are under the age of 5 are underweight, and there are 75% of the population is not getting enough from their food intake. So on that particular thought process, I would like to thank my panelists, Mr. Madhu Pandit, Mr. Surya Kumar, for coming and for engaging and for their brilliant insights. And thank you very much. Thanks to PanIIT Global Enclave for having 3 of us here. Good day and good night to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.